My fiancé told me to leave if I couldn't accept his expensive trips. So I left and took away the money funding his secret affair. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 30 years old, and until a month ago, I believed I was about to marry the man I had spent 5 years building my future around. Looking back, our relationship didn't end because of one argument. It ended because one careless sentence finally exposed everything I had spent years refusing to see. That night, I was sitting at our dining table with my laptop open and our latest credit card statement spread across the wood in front of me. Across the apartment, my fiancé, Brandon Cole, 28, was humming to himself while packing for another weekend away. It was his fourth trip with his friends that year. I checked the total again, even though I already knew I hadn't made a mistake. The Miami trip alone would cost nearly $3,000. Brandon, I called. Can we talk? He was standing in front of the bedroom mirror, adjusting the collar of a brand new white linen shirt. What about? This Miami trip. He kept looking at his reflection. What about it? It's going to cost at least $3,000. So? I turned the statement toward him. That makes almost $12,000 you've spent on trips this year. He smirked as he folded the shirt into his suitcase. I work hard. I deserve to enjoy myself. Normally, I would have backed down. I would have convinced myself that it wasn't the right time or that we could talk after he returned. But I had spent the previous week meeting with mortgage brokers, calculating wedding expenses, and trying to understand why two people with decent incomes never seemed to have enough savings. Now the answer was sitting in front of me. We're supposed to be saving for the wedding, I said, and for a house. Brandon rolled his eyes. God, Evelyn, you're such a buzzkill. I'm serious. So am I. He zipped a second pair of designer sneakers into his suitcase. It's not like you pay for these trips. A bitter laugh escaped me. Technically, he paid for the vacations from his own account. He could only do that because I covered nearly everything else. The apartment was in my name because his credit score hadn't been high enough to qualify for the lease. Every month I paid the rent, utilities, groceries, and internet. I also covered his car payment after the dealership refused to finance him without a cosigner. His salary paid for trips, concerts, clothes, bars, and weekend getaways. Mine kept our shared life running. That's exactly the problem, I said. He finally turned toward me. What problem? You spend every dollar you earn on yourself because you know I'll take care of everything that actually matters. His expression hardened. I don't hear you complaining when I come home relaxed. You don't come home relaxed. You come home exhausted, hungover, and broke. Then you complain that we can't afford the wedding you want. He dropped his toiletry bag onto the bed. So what do you want me to do? Sit here every weekend while you monitor my spending? I want us to have some balance. This is balance. No, Brandon, it isn't. He pointed at himself. I work all week. Then he gestured toward the suitcase. I travel with my friends. Finally, he pointed at me. You worry too much. I'm not asking you to stop seeing your friends. I'm asking you to make decisions with me instead of acting like you're still 21. His jaw tightened. I don't need your permission to live my life. I'm asking you to act like we're partners. We are partners. No, we're living at the same address while I finance the responsible part of both our lives. His face changed immediately. My trips are non-negotiable. There was no hesitation in his voice. It wasn't a discussion or an attempt at compromise. It was a declaration. I tried once more. What if you cut back? No. One major trip a year? No. We could agree on a travel budget. I said no. I studied his face, searching for any sign that he understood what he was risking. So, your vacations matter more than the future we're supposed to be building? If that's how you want to see it. 5 years together, 6 months from our wedding, and he spoke as if we were arguing over where to order dinner. We're adults now, I said. We have responsibilities. He lifted the suitcase from the bed, and I have a life outside this apartment. I never said you couldn't. That's what this feels like. I'm asking for compromise. And I'm saying no. The room went quiet. Then he let out an irritated breath and said, If you don't like it, leave. I stared at him. What? You heard me. If you can't handle who I am, then leave. Go find some boring guy who stays home every weekend and gets excited about retirement accounts. Something in me settled. I wasn't calm because his words didn't hurt. They did. But beneath the shock was a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I had made excuses for every selfish decision and every broken promise because I kept believing the next conversation would be different. It never was. Okay, I said. Brandon blinked. Okay, what? I'll leave. His confidence cracked. Oh, come on. I'm serious. You're ending our relationship over one trip? No, I'm ending it because you'd rather tell me to leave than have an adult conversation about our future. He gave a forced laugh. You're overreacting. I think I've spent 5 years underreacting. He stared at me for a moment, then grabbed the suitcase handle. Whatever, I'll be back Monday. You'll cool off by then. He walked out without kissing me goodbye, apologizing, or saying he loved me. After the door closed, I remained at the dining table, staring at a framed photograph of us above the fireplace. It suddenly looked less like a memory, and more like evidence of how convincingly two people could pretend to want the same life. Nearly an hour passed before I called my older sister. Claire answered immediately. Hey, everything okay? Do you still have that spare bedroom? Her voice changed. I do. Why? I'm leaving Brandon. There was a pause before she said, I've been wondering how much longer it would take. The words stung, mostly because I knew she wasn't trying to be cruel. Can I stay with you? You should have asked months ago. Come whenever you're ready. After we hung up, I packed the things I couldn't afford to lose. Clothes, work files, my laptop, passport, and important documents. While pulling an overnight bag from the back of Brandon's closet, I knocked over a paper shopping bag. Receipts scattered across the floor. Most were from his previous trip to Las Vegas. There were charges for bottle service, a private club table, and a luxury hotel suite. Then one receipt caught my attention. It came from a high-end jewelry boutique. $512 for a women's gold bracelet. Brandon had never given me that bracelet. I searched through the other receipts but found nothing that explained it. Only one name came to mind. Paige Lawson. She had been Brandon's closest friend since college and joined many of his trips. Whenever I questioned their closeness, he insisted Paige saw him like a brother and accused me of being insecure. I didn't confront him. I photographed every receipt, returned them to the bag, and finished packing. By midnight, I was standing in Claire's guest room. Before going to bed, I opened my banking app and removed Brandon as an authorized user from my 2 credit cards. Then I switched off my phone. The next morning, I woke to 47 missed calls, most of them from Brandon's friends. One message sat at the top of the screen. Evelyn, where are you? Brandon's card just got declined in Miami. I read it twice. After 5 years of being protected from his own choices, Brandon was about to learn what his lifestyle actually cost. The messages continued throughout Saturday. Brandon wanted to know why his card had stopped working and accused me of abandoning him in Miami. I responded once. Use your own cards. His reply came immediately. They're maxed out, you know that. Then you shouldn't be spending $3,000 in Miami. He called it financial abuse. I reminded him that the cards belonged to me and that he had told me to leave. By Sunday evening, Paige had lent him enough money to get home. His next message was meant to sound threatening. We're done when I get back. I laughed despite myself. We're already over. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. You can't end 5 years over one argument. This wasn't one argument. It was the first time you were honest about how little our future mattered to you. He insisted that he hadn't meant what he said. I answered with the truth. Yes, you did. You just didn't expect me to take you seriously. He stopped replying for nearly an hour. When another message finally arrived, his tone had changed. Don't do anything stupid with the apartment before I get home. By then, I had already decided exactly what I was going to do. Monday morning, I returned before Brandon's flight landed. The apartment felt strangely peaceful without him in it. I spent the next 4 hours sorting our belongings room by room and packing everything I had purchased. I took everything I had purchased, including the television, gaming console, coffee maker, router, air fryer, microwave, vacuum, couch, coffee table, dining chairs, office desk, and the upgraded shower head Brandon had once insisted he couldn't live without. His designer clothes, sneakers, gaming collectibles, unused exercise equipment, and unopened skincare products remained exactly where they were. I had kept receipts for nearly every major purchase. Brandon used to mock me for it. Nobody keeps paperwork that long, he had said more than once. That morning, the habit he found ridiculous protected me. Before leaving, I placed an envelope in the center of the kitchen counter. Inside was a short handwritten letter. Brandon, you told me to leave, so I did. Rent is paid through the end of the month. I've notified management that I won't continue the lease, so you'll need to arrange somewhere else to live before then. Everything I removed belongs to me. Everything you own remains untouched. Evelyn. Behind the letter, I placed 3 years of credit card statements. Every trip was highlighted. Miami, Las Vegas, Nashville, Scottsdale, New Orleans, Chicago. At the bottom of the final page, I wrote the total, $47,186. It was nearly enough for a down payment on one of the houses we had spent years touring, while Brandon complained that we could never afford one. I closed the door and drove back to Claire's. By 2 that afternoon, the messages began. Where is everything? Less than a minute later, you took the TV? Seriously? Then came the coffee maker, router, air fryer, couch, and coffee table. Finally, he wrote, you left me nothing. That wasn't true. I had left him everything he had contributed. A later message accused me of theft. 40 minutes after that, he admitted the police had told him I was legally allowed to remove my own property. Around 3, anger gave way to panic. Please answer. I'm sorry, okay? Can we fix this? The messages made my chest ache, though not because I wanted him back. Part of me had spent years waiting for him to fight for us. Now that he was finally doing it, his reasons were painfully obvious. He didn't miss our future. He missed the life my money had made easy. On Tuesday morning, my receptionist called my office. Evelyn, there's a man here asking to see you. My stomach tightened. Who? Brandon. I'm in meetings all morning. Please tell him to email me. He says he'll wait. Then please call security. 5 minutes later, I watched through the conference room window as 2 security officers escorted him toward the lobby doors. He gestured wildly, pointing back at the building and running both hands through his hair. When the doors closed behind him, the people around the table glanced at me. No one asked what had happened, and I was grateful for that. By Wednesday, mutual friends had started calling. Brandon told them I had abandoned him in Miami, emptied the apartment, and cut him off financially without warning. I sent everyone the same response. Brandon told me to leave if I couldn't accept his lifestyle. I accepted his decision. Some people stopped replying. Others apologized. A few admitted they had always wondered how he afforded so many trips. On Thursday, one of my coworkers entered my office holding her phone. You should probably see this. Brandon had posted a long Instagram story about controlling women, emotional manipulation, and men who were punished for being independent. He didn't name me, but he didn't need to. The comments weren't what he expected. Wasn't this his 4th vacation this year? Doesn't he live in her apartment? How independent is he if she pays the bills? Sounds like she stopped funding him. The post disappeared within an hour. That evening, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't expected. Relief. Brandon had spent years controlling the story between us. Now, other people were beginning to see the parts he had worked so hard to hide. Friday evening, exactly 1 week after Brandon told me to leave, he sent an email with the subject line, "Please read." I opened it after work. Evelyn, I messed up. I shouldn't have said what I said. I was stressed about the wedding and took it out on you. I can't afford the apartment alone, and my cards are maxed out. Paige won't lend me any more money. My parents think I'm being irresponsible. Please come home. I'll cancel the next trip and we can start saving for the wedding. I love you. Brandon. I read the email twice. He apologized for what he had said, but not for leaving me to carry our life alone. The entire email was about the apartment, his maxed out cards, the wedding, and how badly his life was falling apart. He never once asked how I was doing. My reply was brief. Brandon, you didn't make a mistake. You were honest about the life you want, and it isn't the life I want anymore. The engagement is over. The apartment is month to month, and you have 3 weeks to find somewhere else to live. I'll return the ring by certified mail. Evelyn! His answer arrived seconds later. You can't do this to me. I closed the email, but Brandon wasn't finished. Over the next 2 weeks, he tried guilt first. He sent photographs from our first vacation, Christmas with my family, and the night we became engaged. Each picture came with a message asking whether 5 years together meant nothing to me. I didn't respond. Then he began posting old photographs of us with captions about loyalty, people giving up too easily, and love requiring sacrifice. His friends initially flooded the comments with sympathy. That ended when someone asked, "Didn't you tell her to leave?" The post vanished soon afterward. A few days later, my HR manager asked me to come into her office. Someone attempted to access your employee benefits portal and reset the security information connected to your retirement account, she said, turning the monitor toward me. The system blocked the request after the verification questions were answered incorrectly. My hands went cold. Were they able to access the account? No, nothing was accessed. We've locked your records, and no changes can be made without speaking to you directly. Do you know where the request came from? We can't prove who submitted it, but we thought you should know. I didn't need proof to understand what had happened. Brandon had always treated my money as if it belonged to him. Even after the relationship ended, he still believed he had the right to reach into my financial life. Later that week, Paige sent me an Instagram message. Hey, Evelyn, I heard what happened. I'm really sorry. Brandon can be difficult sometimes. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. Her concern felt rehearsed, almost as if she were trying to establish herself as an innocent bystander before I discovered otherwise. I took a screenshot and left the message unanswered. A few days passed before one of my cycling friends forwarded Brandon's latest story. It showed a candlelit table, 2 glasses of wine, and a woman's hand reaching across the table. The caption read, "Sometimes beautiful things grow from painful endings." The woman's face wasn't visible, but I didn't have to wait long for the truth. The following morning, Derek, an old mutual friend, called while I was grocery shopping. "I think you should know something," he said. I moved my cart away from the crowded aisle. What happened? "I was at the Riverside Wellness Spa yesterday. Brandon was there." "With who?" "Paige." My grip tightened around the phone. "They booked a couples massage," he continued. "I didn't want to assume anything, but afterward they kissed in the lobby." For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of the store around me. The bracelet from Vegas, Paige appearing on nearly every trip, the expensive gifts, Brandon insisting she could never be interested in him. Suddenly, every memory involving the two of them looked different. My eyes burned, and I pressed a hand against the shopping cart to steady myself. Even after I had left him, the confirmation still hurt. 5 years of trust had been turned into cover for an affair, and I had unknowingly financed parts of it. I abandoned my groceries and sat in my car until I could breathe normally again. By the time I drove away, the last doubt I had about ending the engagement was gone. Brandon hadn't simply chosen vacations over our future. He had been using those trips to maintain a second relationship behind my back. I considered confronting him but decided against it. He had lied when the truth was easy, and evidence would only give him another chance to invent an explanation. At that point, the only thing left connecting us was the apartment. Over the next 2 weeks, our communication was limited to short emails about when he planned to move out. He still hadn't moved out. Each email contained a new excuse. He needed another few days. His parents' home was being renovated. He had applied for several apartments. He was waiting for a friend to confirm a room. I stopped believing any of it. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, my landlord, Mr. Hanson, called. "I've received 3 noise complaints about your unit this week," he said. "I haven't lived there in almost a month." "I understand, but legally you're still the tenant." There was a large party last night. Neighbors reported people coming and going until after 2 in the morning. "A party?" "Someone posted videos online. I thought you should know before management takes formal action." As soon as we hung up, I searched Brandon's social media. He had hidden most of his stories from me, but several mutual friends had already reposted them. The first video showed balloons hanging from the ceiling of my former living room. A banner reading, "New Beginnings," stretched across the wall, while music shook the apartment. People danced on furniture I had purchased. Champagne sprayed across the kitchen. In another clip, Brandon stood with one arm around Paige and raised his glass. "Here's to fresh starts." The room erupted in cheers. My embarrassment gave way to disbelief. He had violated the lease, damaged the apartment, and documented the entire thing. I saved every video and screenshot before sending him one message. "The landlord has been notified about the unauthorized party, and the lease violations. You need to arrange your move immediately. All further communication about the apartment will go through management." His reply came almost immediately. "You can't kick me out. I'm not the one making that decision. Management is, and you're not listed on the lease. Paige's father is a lawyer. Then talk to him. I've already sent the videos and complaints to the landlord." He didn't answer. The following Monday, I met Mr. Hanson outside the apartment. Claire came with me because she didn't want me walking in alone. Brandon was gone, but the front door had been left unlocked. The smell reached us before we had crossed the threshold. Broken wine bottles covered part of the kitchen floor. Dark stains spread across the living room carpet, and cigarette burns marked the countertop. One dining chair had lost a leg, and someone had punched through the drywall beside the hallway. Claire stood in the doorway, horrified. "He left it like this?" I pulled out my phone and photographed every room, stain, broken item, and damaged wall while Mr. Hanson completed his inspection report. "This is extensive," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, Evelyn." "So am I." The repair estimate arrived an hour later. $3,200. I paid it the same afternoon because I refused to let Brandon's choices damage my credit or rental history. Once the payment cleared, I forwarded the invoice, photographs, and inspection report to an attorney. That evening, Brandon called. "What?" he said when I answered, as if I were the one inconveniencing him. "I assume you've seen the inspection report." "It was one party. One party caused over $3,000 in damage." "You're exaggerating." "I have photographs and videos." His voice dropped. "You paid for it already?" "Yes. You didn't have to do that. My name is on the lease. I'll pay you back." "With what money, Brandon?" He didn't answer. When he finally spoke again, the anger had drained from his voice. "I never thought things would go this far. You didn't think I would leave. You didn't think the cards would stop working. You didn't think the landlord would hold anyone responsible. That doesn't mean you didn't cause it." He hung up without another word. Within a few days of the inspection, Brandon moved out and returned to his parents' home. I assumed the situation had finally reached its worst point. Then Derek called again. "You remember Paige?" he asked. "I'd rather not." "Well, apparently she's married." I nearly spilled my coffee. "What?" "Not separated, not in the middle of a divorce. Married. Her husband found the spa photos." My stomach turned. "So Brandon knew?" "I don't know, but her husband confronted her, and from what I've heard, she ended things with Brandon immediately." Brandon had thrown away our engagement for a relationship that lasted only until Paige faced real consequences. He had helped destroy 2 relationships, including his own, and still hadn't been the person she chose. After Paige ended the affair, Brandon disappeared from social media for nearly a week. I expected calls, emails, or another attempt to rewrite what had happened, but nothing came. Then Claire visited my office carrying 2 coffees. "I just talked to Melissa," she said. Melissa had gone to college with Brandon and remained loosely connected to his friend group. "What happened?" "Paige's husband filed for divorce." "That doesn't surprise me." What came out afterward might. Apparently, Brandon wasn't the first man Paige introduced as just a friend. She had been doing it for years. I leaned back in my chair. So, he wasn't special. No, he was just the latest. I thought the news would make me feel vindicated. Instead, I felt tired. Brandon had thrown away 5 years with me for someone who disappeared the moment staying with him became inconvenient. Over the following weeks, Brandon's version of events began falling apart. One day, he told people I had abandoned him. The next, he admitted that he had told me to leave. He insisted Paige had only been a friend, even as old vacation photographs began circulating and people noticed how often the two of them appeared together. The friend group fractured. Several people apologized to me. Others admitted they had always found Paige's presence on the trip strange but hadn't wanted to interfere. One friend said, "I think everyone saw pieces of it. We just didn't believe Brandon would be stupid enough to risk everything." Neither had I. About a month after the apartment inspection, my small claims case was heard. The evidence was straightforward. The lease, repair invoices, photographs, noise complaints, inspection report, and Brandon's own videos from the party. The judge ruled in my favor and ordered him to reimburse the full amount. Outside the courthouse, Brandon approached me. He looked exhausted. The designer watch was gone, and the expensive clothes had been replaced by a plain shirt and worn jeans. "Evelyn." I stopped but didn't move closer. "I never thought we'd end up here," he said. "I believe that." His expression tightened. "You really don't feel anything?" "I feel sad that 5 years ended this way, but I'm also relieved it ended before the wedding. I loved you." The words might once have broken me. Now they only sounded incomplete. "You loved never having to worry about rent, bills, or what happened when you spent too much. That isn't the same as loving me." "That's not fair." "Neither was using my money to take another woman on trips." His face lost what little color it had. "So you know." "I know enough." He looked down at the pavement. "I'll pay what the court ordered." "That's between you and the court now." "I'm trying to fix things." "I hope you do, but you're not fixing them for me." I walked toward my car, leaving him outside the courthouse with the consequences he had spent years expecting someone else to absorb. Later that week, I heard that Brandon had tried selling the engagement ring he had once given me, and that I had returned after ending the engagement. He had always talked about it as if it were worth a small fortune, but the jeweler offered him less than $2,000. It wasn't enough to erase his credit card debt, reimburse the apartment damage, or fund another luxury weekend. 2 months after I left, I opened my banking app while drinking coffee on Claire's back porch. Between my salary, annual bonus, and the money I was no longer spending on Brandon, I had added just over $7,000 to my savings, even after paying for the apartment repairs and legal fees. For years, I believed Brandon and I simply didn't earn enough to move forward. The truth was far less complicated. I had been financing 2 lives, while only one of us was planning for the future. Without constant arguments, surprise expenses, and calls about Brandon's latest crisis, I began focusing on work again. The project I was leading finished ahead of schedule, and a month later, my director called me into her office. "I've been watching your work," she said. "I hope that's a good thing." "It is." She slid a folder across the desk. "We'd like you to lead our newest regional investment project." I opened the folder and stared at the title. "This is a promotion." "You earned it." Walking back to my office, I felt something loosen inside me. Supporting Brandon had never helped us move forward. It had quietly delayed everything I wanted for myself. A few weeks later, I began looking at condominiums. I wasn't searching for the oversized house Brandon had wanted to display online. I wanted something comfortable, affordable, and entirely mine. Buying a home no longer felt impossible. Around the same time, I started talking to a man named Ethan from Claire's cycling group. We had crossed paths several times before finally spending a Saturday morning ride together. Afterward, we stopped for coffee. When he reached for the bill, I said, "Let's split it." He glanced at me. "Are you sure?" "Very." He laughed. "Good, I was hoping you'd say that." It was a small exchange, but it stayed with me. There was no performance or argument about who owed whom, just 2 adults treating each other like equals. Over the following weeks, we went hiking, cooked dinner together, visited farmers markets, and talked for hours. Nothing moved too quickly. There were no grand declarations or impossible promises. Being with him felt easy, and after 5 years of constant tension, I was still learning how unfamiliar that could feel. Meanwhile, mutual friends occasionally mentioned Brandon. By then, Brandon's old lifestyle had completely collapsed. The trips stopped. So did the designer purchases. His social media changed from beaches, hotels, and champagne to quotes about healing, growth, and learning from mistakes. I never commented. The court approved a repayment plan for the apartment damage. Brandon would send $50 each month until the judgment was satisfied. It would take years. One Saturday afternoon, I ran into his mother in the grocery store. "Evelyn," she said as I passed the produce section. "Mrs. Cole." She gave me a tired smile. "How have you been?" "I'm doing well." "I heard you were promoted." "I was." "I'm happy for you." "Thank you." She hesitated before saying, "I'm sorry about Brandon." "You don't have to apologize for him. We spoiled him. We kept thinking he'd grow out of it. He never had a reason to." Her eyes dropped briefly. "You're right." We stood there awkwardly until she added, "He talks about you. He says he didn't know what he had." He knew what I did for him. He just believed I would keep doing it no matter how he treated me. A sad smile crossed her face. "That sounds like my son." We wished each other well and went our separate ways. A week later, Paige's husband sent me a message. "I know we've never met, but I wanted to thank you. If you hadn't left when you did, I might never have discovered what was happening in my own marriage." I read it once and locked my phone. There was nothing useful I could say. We had both spent years trusting people who used that trust as cover. Looking back, I don't hate Brandon. Hatred would mean continuing to give him space in my life, and I stopped doing that the night I packed my bags. He told me that if I didn't like the way he lived, I should leave. He meant it as a threat because he believed I would always be too invested, too forgiving, or too afraid to start again. Instead, I took his advice. The day I stopped financing his life was the day I finally began building my own.